All right, I think we are live. Got a stream going for the first time in quite some time, and back from Japan. Went to Tokyo with Tim and Mark, Iconic Comics. Went to Japan for a show, and it was outstanding. So I figured I would go through my Twitter feed and just kind of cover everything that's happened since we've been gone, doing a little after action review and answering any questions that you might have about Japan, talking about Soulfinder Volume 5. I can talk about anything else that's in the news lately, just kind of go down the list. So, yeah, all sorts of stuff. AL is here, says hi, hello, nice to see you. So, yeah, well, let's see where we could start off. Boom. And I could bounce around. I don't have any strict schedule here, but I basically want to just catch up with everybody, let you know what I thought about Tokyo, what I think about 2026, what's going to happen with that, Soulfinder Volume 5, Silent Service, where that's at. I just put out some new artwork by Matt Weldon, colored by Rodrigo Alviles. So that's coming along at a steady pace. Could talk about that. And got a new documentary out, The Cartoonist Who Destroyed the Comic Industry. I actually didn't see this, but I'll talk about what I have heard about it. Got the Japanese translation of Soulfinder Demons match. Let's see. Davis here says, yo, long time, brother. Cool stuff, man. Neo Star is here, says, evening, Doug. AL, I went to Tokyo last year for Christmas. It was great. Yeah, no, I had a very good time. In some weird way, my first tweet is actually, oh, wait, I'm on the Soulfinder stuff here, so I could zoom out. I could start with the weirdness first and then just keep going down the list. So it just happened to come up today. So, all right. So Japan, awesome. Tokyo, it's basically like a city that is realizing its full potential. When you have generally a culturally homogenous group of people that all have their heads on straight and they're all they agree on what direction they want to go as a country in many ways, and they actually have various virtues including patience and charity, and they're just generally just very kind people who also like technology and good food. Like it's just a very good mix of things, and I can get into that. But I was very impressed with Tokyo. I barely got any sleep. So on the flight there, I had to go from Reno to Dallas, and then that was like 3 hours. Then we had a 4-hour layover, which turned into like a 5 or maybe even 6-hour layover. Then the flight to Japan was 14 hours. So I basically didn't sleep for like 24 hours. Alex, nice to see you. Tillium, thanks for tuning in. And that actually worked out in my favor. So my wife and her sister came with, and then we ended up meeting Tim and Mark once we got there. But my wife was like, hey, you should probably get some sleep on the plane. And my thing is because there's, how do I say it, with jet lag, it's so many hours ahead or behind or whatever. I like to try and stay up until I'm like those dogs that are essentially falling asleep and forcing themselves up. So I was awake so long that my eyelids were like forcing themselves closed. And then the second they would close, a dream would start to materialize like on the, the back of my eyelids or whatever. And I would just jerk myself up. And I would be like, no, I gotta stay up. And then I would start to fall asleep. And as soon as my eyelid like barely closed, I would start to dream something, and I would get myself up. So anyway, we get there, and I just pass out, and then I wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning, Tokyo time, and I'm basically immediately on their clock because my body was just so tired that it like was the reset button. And then so I do the same thing on the way back. I basically just stayed up for like 24 hours plus, passed out after a shower after I got home, and then I was immediately back on to Pacific time and good to go. But I was definitely pooped. It was like my body, we were going all day, late into the night, wake up super early, going to go see sights and all of that. And then it was weird because usually with like Bell County Comic Con, what'll happen is I basically go straight into it. So the past few years, I've gone like a day early. I've met with Eric Canetti. We usually have like a dinner in Austin, Texas, and just crash in Austin for a night. So get really rested, have a really nice, relaxing dinner, catch up. Then the next day, go to Bell County, and boom, you're like basically you set up, and then you're good to go. You go for like 48 hours straight, and then my body just completely crashes when I go home. But this time, I had 2 days, 2+ days or whatever it was of sightseeing in Japan, which is like running all around Tokyo in the metro station, taking buses, doing like going to art exhibits and all over the place. So that was all like, who knows how many miles of walking we did in like 2 days leading into the show. Then I had the show, and typically on shows, I am like on high alert the entire time. I'm trying to be as, animated as possible in a natural, organic way, not in a weird way, but be attentive to the people that are showing up and friendly and all this sort of stuff. So did the show for 2 days, and then normally I would crash, after that. But no, we had 2 more days of, sightseeing in Tokyo and stuff. So basically for an entire week straight, I was just going redlining it in terms of like my energy and trying to get in as much as possible, because you don't know if you're going to ever come back or whatever. I always wanted to go there. And so then I got in, and so when I finally crashed in Reno, I slept for 13 hours straight. And so that was interesting. I haven't done that in a long time. And then the next night, I slept for 11 hours straight. So I normally don't do that. My wife was just like, in all the years I have known you, you always just get up super early in the morning, like you're ready to go. And you were just essentially in a coma. So I think my body was just like, okay, time to catch up on all the sleep you did not get in Japan. So anyway, okay, we'll start out with the weirdest stuff first. So for instance, here's this, someone, Synesthetic shared this, T2 clip today, when John Connor is on the run, and, the Terminator's coming after him. Was it like the T-1000 or whatever? Anyway, that's what I felt like. So on the very last night, we were staying by the Godzilla Hotel, and in that area of town, it's like party time, Tokyo or whatever. Yes, Tim and Mark stayed at the Godzilla Hotel, and I stayed at Hotel Amanik, which is like, not too far away. It's just like a few blocks away. But on the last night, after I said goodbye to them, we were with another friend, and I was talking with that guy walking back to my hotel, and you lose track of where you are. You're just involved in conversation. And then he's just like, all right, I got to go. I'll see you later. I'll be, boop, I got to go. I'll see you later. We part ways, but I went down like the wrong street. Like basically like you're a few blocks away from where you need to go. And I was like, oh crap. All right. I know it's basically in this direction. I got to go back. But at that in that section of the city, there's like basically these Nigerian guys who are like trying to get you to see the prostitutes or whatever. And there's legitimate, like legit prostitutes or whatever. So I was off the main thing where those people are there too, but it's like not as, bad because it's so crowded. And so like, I'm trying to get away. And in this tweet, I didn't even mention it, but there was like 2 women, and then there was like the Nigerian guy. And then the day before there was another Nigerian guy. But I'm basically walking, and they're like accosting me. And like the faster that they're, you know, like they're trying to get your attention. They want you to get with like the women or whatever, or go wherever they go, doing all their, you know, like weirdo sexual stuff or whatever. And I'm walking. So I didn't even make eye contact. So I learned my lesson on the first night. I made eye contact with this like Nigerian dude for like a millisecond. And then he immediately started beelining towards me and be like, hey, nice to meet you, blah, blah, blah. But they're trying to get you to go with, you know, wherever they have their women or whatever they're doing. And so the first night, that one guy was like chasing me down. It was really weird. And I heard that sometimes they'll actually try and fight you if you like reject them or just tell them to like, you know, pound sand or whatever. So the second night, I didn't even make eye contact with these people. I learned my lesson and I was like, I'm just going to like walk through with a purpose or whatever. And they were still coming at me. So then I'm walking faster. Then they're walking faster. Then I'm walking faster. Then they're walking. Then I'm like speed walking. You know how they actually have like speed walking competitions or whatever. And it might even be in the Olympics. So I was like just shy of like a sprint away from these people. And you could hear them. They're like in your peripheral vision, you could kind of see they're like right behind you. They're like trying to keep up with you. And they're like saying all sorts of stuff. And you're just like, what is going on? Do I have to like sprint and get away from this people? And it was just like, and the guy was just like, where are you hurrying to? The ladies are waiting. And I'm just like basically like sprinting away from this guy. And like, not today, Satan. Like, that's what my like internal monologue was like. I didn't even want to like, I was just like, don't even like turn towards this guy. Don't acknowledge his existence. Don't anything. And then hopefully he doesn't attack you. Like I heard sometimes they'll like weirdly get violent with you if you like, you know, want nothing to do with them. But I made the mistake of, you know, not paying attention while I was talking to my friend and got off track of the main strip or whatever it was. And then I had to turn around and then all of a sudden you're this lone white guy at like midnight, 1, 2 in the morning, whatever the heck it was. Yeah. Oh, Mark's here. Mark, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for treating us, Doug. I'm sorry about the aggressive Nigerian pimps. Yeah, I mean, they were the minority, but that was really weird. And I really did felt like I was John Connor trying to escape these guys. So it was kind of funny. And I got away. And then I get home or get to the hotel, and then my wife and her sister are there, and then I gotta like, recount the story to them. But obviously, like Mark's like, not today, pitmonger. Yeah, it was funny. It was like out of a movie. I often feel like my life has all these like crazy movie moments to them, and then you get to think about it, and you're just like, what if I was a different person? And what if I went down that Nigerian pimp rabbit hole in Tokyo? Like, would I end up dead? Would I end up like the next day without a kidney because somebody drugged me or like whatever? Like my marriage would be destroyed and all this sort of stuff. Like, what is my guardian angel like thinking as I'm in this situation and I'm like sprinting away? Like, what's going on like a metaphysical level? But yeah, it was cool. So that was like the weirdest thing probably that happened to me like while I was there. But overall, like, you know, absent the Nigerian pimps, the Japanese people were awesome, and I'll get into that as well. So let's see. AL says that did not happen to us in Japan. Yeah, that's good. Well, all I gotta say, AL, is if you're around that area, the Godzilla Hotel, like Friday, Saturday, Sunday, around midnight, post midnight, and you just start wandering around, you never know what's gonna happen, but they're there. So yeah. Let's see. Anybody who's watching Wandering Creative or others, I know there are people that actually purchased the Japanese translation of Soulfinder Demons Match, which is currently available at Iconic Comics, along with the Seraphim plushie as well. The Seraphim plushie has done very well. It's just about Christmas time. I don't know if they could get you the plushie in time for Christmas, but as I said on Twitter, and you will see, if I see a picture of a Seraphim plushie on a Christmas tree topping it, you will be entitled to a Doug prize the next time I see you at a show or whatever. And probably if you were just like, hey, can't you just mail me a Doug prize? I'd probably do that too. Anybody who's watching this. But in general, it's just like, hey, if I see you at a show and you are one of those people, I will gladly give you a Doug prize. But anyway, if you want in on the Japanese translation action of Soulfinder Demons match, again, it is up at Iconic Comics. And the next one that I am doing is Soulfinder Tunnel Hounds. Why are you doing them out of order, Doug? You're asking. Well, again, most people know here that each tale is a self-contained story. But Soulfinder Tunnel Hounds takes place decades earlier in Vietnam. It is the origin of Father Reginald Crane. And so you don't know what's going to happen to you. I don't know how long I'm going to live. Something weird could happen to me, within the next year or so. So I wanted to make sure I get at least the origins of Father Redder and the origin of Father Crane translated. And if in the worst case scenario, if something happens to me, then people have the two origin tales. But the plan, ultimately, I will slowly try and kind of tick them off as long as I know I have a solid translation. So that's the other thing, is just because you translate a book doesn't mean it's actually a good translation. And I learned that, I don't want to say the hard way, but going through the process here, I realized that, you really got to slow your roll if you don't know what you're doing. Because you could always translate it, but that doesn't mean you get all the little cultural stuff right. You might be, the translation might technically be right, but in terms of like how Japanese people would receive that translation is not going to be the same as if you really took your time and did it right and talked to people. I still have a Spanish translation of Demon's Match that I have not released yet. I have not printed yet. I might do that down the road. But there are numerous reasons why I just put that on the back burner, and maybe I'll come back to it down the line. We shall see. But anyway, back to the old Twitters. Let's see. Keep going down. All right, we'll just knock these off in order. Sorry, I'm bouncing around here. Let's see. Tillium, definitely look forward to Volume 5. Neostar, Beware the Pimpmonger. Dave, nothing good happens after midnight around the Godzilla Hotel. Got it. Wonder what goes on around those giant Gundam. Yeah, I mean, if we go back, I would like to go back for sure. If I am invited back to Tokyo, I will 90% sure make sure that I have the resources to go, and I will make time to do it. Mark says several folks who picked up Soulfinder at the Japan show have complimented the Japanese translation on X. It was a great quality. Well, that is in part due to you and Tim. Both of you know what roles you played in making sure that this book was available in time for the show. So that was the other thing. I was kind of sitting on it. I was embarrassed that it wasn't where it needed to be for a long time. And I was embarrassed about asking people for help and all this sort of stuff. And so thanks to Tim and Mark on multiple levels, the translation got done in time for the show, and I was able to sell it there, and I was able to sell plushies there. And I got to see Stephen Cummings, who's done artwork for me in the past, and I got to get with him soon here to see if he wants to start doing some Soulfinder 5 art for me. So we'll see how that goes. So Stephen, if you're watching right now, I understand that I need to reach out to you. I am sorry for not doing it yet. I'm still getting out from all the stuff that piled up while I was gone. So yeah. Neostar, one of these days I'll have to get my own books translated. Hopefully I can find a good Japanese or Portuguese translator. Yeah, no, it's weird because obviously I don't speak Japanese, so I have to trust the people that are translating it that it's good. and you just literally don't know. Obviously you want to find people that are sharp cookies. And I think I did that again, thanks to Tim and Mark. And it appears, based on the feedback that I have received on X, and now that Mark is also attesting to, that the translation was a solid one. So that is a relief. Because you could translate it could be horrible, and then you're just like stuck with it, and you're like, well, I tried my best, well, what are you gonna do? Anyway, speaking about Soulfinder books, here's another finished page, or not lettered, I should say. It's an inked and colored page, thanks to Matt Weldon and Rodrigo Aviles. As I was saying on X, this is a scene. So when the nuclear subs come back into port and they're there, a lot of people don't know that some of them actually fly the Jolly Roger flag in addition to the American flag. And you're like, why would they fly the Jolly Roger? It's like pirate flag. If you go into naval history, the submarine captains and submariners, they were essentially seen as pirates, and it was seen as an underhanded tactic to essentially kind of like lurk in the depths and take pot shots at people and kill them and then disappear back into the depths or whatever. And so when it was first introduced into warfare, there were obviously military officers and high-ranking officials that were just like, no, submarines shouldn't even be used in warfare. It's unfair, etc., etc., etc. And so again, you can look into the history, but the submariners, they embraced it, and they're just like, oh yeah, well, because back in the day, the British, I think it was, they essentially were saying, like, if we catch you, we're gonna hang you and kill you. And so the submariners were actually successful, so they started flying the flag as a way to, like, essentially give the middle finger to the British and say, like, ha, you can't get us. And then they started adding little things to the flags on their missions. It's all secretive, the silent service, yada, yada, yada. Anyway, so I liked that idea of juxtaposing the American flag with the Jolly Roger, and also thinking about the pressure that is put upon military leaders, particularly during the Cold War, but really anytime. And the idea of what happens when you put a leader under physical, psychological, and spiritual duress. They have all of these tasks that are foisted upon their shoulders, all of this pressure. Is there such a thing as spiritual crush depth? How far can a man go into the abyss before he reaches spiritual crush depth? How far into the abyss can a man go and still be saved? What happens when you place all sorts of stressors upon a man and he's not allowed to talk about it? The silent service. And so what happens with that sort of stuff? So this is an exchange between a young William Neville from Black Tide and Soulfinder 78, who is alluded to in the other books. And so now you have the origin of Soulfinder 78, and you see exactly what happens to him in Soulfinder Silent Service. So it's coming along. Matt's doing a great job. Rodrigo's doing a great job. But they are also juggling their own lives, especially professional opportunities. And so when things come up and you're asked to do all these sorts of things because you're very talented, I need to also be flexible with the guys who are on quote unquote Team Soulfinder, so their star can rise and they can do all the things that they want on a professional level. And they can, when a window of opportunity is open, they can jump through it and not feel as though I am trying to hold them back in any way. So Matt, if you're watching, Rodrigo, if you're watching, thank you for being a part of Team Soulfinder. Thank you for doing good work on multiple books now. I really appreciate it. I am grateful for your help, and it's awesome to have you guys on board yet again. So anyway, that's the Soulfinder update. Do we want to go into the the documentary and influencers and all this sort of stuff. We could do that next, I guess. So this guy, the cartoonist who destroyed the comic industry. So if you remember a while back, there was a guy, Mikey No More. He did a documentary on Comicsgate, and I think he was actually the first one to do like an extended documentary. And it was really, really good. I was really impressed with the effort that went into it and the thought, and he scripted it all out and did all that sort of stuff. And then obviously Lazmat, I believe, came out with the second, like it was like multiple parts. I didn't see all of them. I saw like chunks of them after that. So I saw the first one, and then I saw chunks of Lazmat's, and they were both solid. So then this one came out, and obviously, anytime stuff like this comes out, people ask me if I saw it and all this sort of stuff. I tried to watch this one, and I couldn't do well. One, I got a lot of other stuff going on, but two, one thing that I noticed about this one was this guy was trying to essentially be like Data from Star Trek, where he was stripping out, like, I don't know, like he was trying to be objective, which is a good thing. But on another level, you can be objective without coming across as Data from Star Trek, where you're like, I have no judgments on anything. This person believed this person believed that. And some agreed and some did not. Beep, beep, boop, boop. Actually, Data shows more emotion than that. But that was like the feeling that I was getting from it. And I was just like, this is not for me. I cannot sit through like, what is it? Like an hour and 6 minutes of this guy, like just saying like, some people like this and some people didn't. This is what they believed. This is what other people believed. And like, no, how do I say it? Like, I feel like if you are covering something like this, you can be fair, like, and still sort of, I don't know, have some sort of like gut opinion on things or something along those lines. So it just didn't resonate with me. Maybe obviously other people like it because it's got 80,000 views. But I wasn't digging it so much. And then the other thing, I was just kind of like bouncing through it. And he basically talks about like Comicsgate. He boils Comicsgate down to Ethan and ya boy Zach Richard C. Meyer. Like it was like theirs. It was like their baby, and like nobody else. Like there was just other people that were just like kind of there, and I'm just like, I don't know if that's true. Other people can say what they think about that, about the history of Comicsgate, but I feel like you're being disingenuous for whatever reason. To just essentially boil it down to like one day, like your boy Zach woke up and he was like, and then Ethan were like, spearheading Comicsgate or something. Like, and you're just like, I feel like there's a little bit nuance that you're missing there. You said in your first few minutes that you did all sorts of research into this, and I don't, something's a little off here. So, very interesting. So whatever. And I haven't actually read through the comments here. I guess I could like scroll through. Tillium, he is like Mr. Late to the Party, and hearing the late party gossip. Yeah, I don't know. It's like, and you know what? To his credit, like I saw online that Richard went through another mass deletion of like his YouTube, what is it, the community tab section. Like to his credit, in terms of researching it, like guys like Richard literally deleted years and years worth of videos, like probably like hundreds or thousands of hours worth of like actual videos, and definitely the community tab. So on that level, like it probably makes it kind of like difficult, but I mean, I still felt like it was this sort of I don't want to say funhouse mirror version of Comicsgate, but it was just like you distilled it to like the two guys, and like it was more than that. Like I don't know. It was very weird. But on another level, it's like, all right, well, on how do I say it? Based on where Comicsgate is today, like if you're not included in that conversation, like he's probably doing you a favor, like on multiple levels. He talks about like at the very end of it, he actually goes into where is it? Like he goes into what
Uber Eats knows whenever you watch football, you get hungry. And look, a buy one, get one 10-piece McDonald's chicken
accused of drug and alcohol abuse.
He goes into, you know, what Comicsgate has devolved into over the years, and you're just like, okay, well, you know, if my name is nowhere, again, I haven't watched all this, but it's like if my name is nowhere near any of this, like pulling out crack pipes and ultimately winding up you know, doing bizarre things to urinals late at night, then that's a win in my book. I don't want anything, I don't want to be tied to this sort of imagery as much as possible. So I guess Gamer from Mars, thank you for not finding a way to get my name in terms of YouTube algorithms and stuff linked, you know, with that sort of thing. So yeah.
Though those are admittedly mainly just memes from people who dislike him. That reflects the much larger reason for why Comicsgate fell apart. People became resentful when they saw the leader of the movement's goals shift from changing the mainstream to promoting his own pet project.
I should watch some of this. So this is kind of interesting. Let's see. Good evening, everyone. Time Warrior Saga. Ram is here. Hello, Doug. You had a great time. I did have a great time in Japan.
Whether you think the response was justified or not, diversity in comics is in a similar boat, maintaining a steady content stream on YouTube and crowdfunding books on Indiegogo. But judging from some of his recent videos, as well as deleting his old uploads, it seems like he has a bit of remorse for the cultural circle jerk he helped to cultivate.
Oh, geez. That is not pulling any punches there. So that's definitely not Data from Star Trek. But yeah, I mean, I got to be careful what I say. But, you know, maybe if time allows and I'm on the road or something like that, I might bounce around through this and watch a little bit more of it. But it just seemed like I said, he was trying to go out of his way to be like, non-judgmental of both the industry and in CG or whatever, when it's just like, we just tell the truth about everybody. And this is one where I was like fast scrolling through. It's like he was like, all right, I did a bunch of research.
Those on the other side of the aisle had their own problems with the new Armored Avenger. Aside from the people criticizing her purely for her race and gender, one major talking point was that many readers simply found Ironheart too unlikable. The main example
Now, if you actually go, like there was only a couple people back then who covered this when it first came out. And if you go back to my blog, douglashearns.blog, I'm one of the only people that was writing about this particular book in terms of not kissing Bendis's butt. And I would even argue that I was one of the first people to bring up the fact that she went out of her way to like myself and Englentine and Captain Cummings, that Riri Williams went to her teacher and begged her teacher to essentially discriminate against her so she would be able to use fake discrimination as a springboard to becoming a superhero, which she didn't even become, because she essentially she's either like stole Tony Stark's technology, or I forgot exactly what she did, but basically it was like IP theft of Stark tech, and then she like reversed engineered it and used it and blah 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 blah. So it's like not only was she stealing technology, but her actual origin was her begging her teacher to be like, please say something to me that like I can't actually, achieve the things that I want to in modern America. And her teacher's like, but you can. And she's like, no, you got to tell me that I can't. And then her teacher was like, okay, you can't. And then it was just really bad writing all around and bizarre. And I don't know. Anyway, again, if this guy was actually doing his research, he would have seen that, well, Captain Cummings, again, his content is gone, but Englantine's is there. My content is there. Both the blogs and I believe my video reviews are there. And again, back then when this first came out, there was pretty much nobody covering this at all. So whatever. So again, to me, it's just like, you can't say I was doing a deep dive of the research. And then like, you're like, okay, well, where did you get that from? You're just using screenshots, but this might be my own like journalistic past or whatever, but it's like, you should give the person credit where you got it from. Like it should either be the blog post from the original person or the YouTube video of the original person. Don't just say like, I did my research and then you're just like showing clips without giving proper attribution to the people that did the original research. But I digress. So anyway, I might check this out down the line. Oh, the video. Let's see what we got through the comments section. Tillium, the original Ironheart is Japanese, not this Bendis plagiarism. Bendis stealing Japanese hero. Yeah, I don't know exactly, what our Japanese history is. All I know is that this was an uninspired. That was the other thing is the book became not about Tony Stark. It was all about Riri Williams, but they kept calling it Iron Man for like the longest time. So it's like, I know what you're doing. You understand that you can't just relaunch Riri Williams' book or an Ironheart book because it wouldn't get anywhere near the sales as an Iron Man book, which I think ultimately, if I remember correctly, again, time is flying by. But then when they did finally release like the Ironheart book or whatever it was, didn't it bomb if I'm not mistaken? So again, if I'm mistaken, I'm sorry, but it seems like everything that back in the day I was talking about came to pass in terms of Riri Williams, and including my early videos where I was saying like, and blog posts, this is where they're going with all of this stuff. They are going to use all of these quote unquote SJW books to then be a feeder into television and movies. That's what they're going to do. And back then, again, 2017, 2018, 2019, that was when I was like really into a lot of this stuff. But even going back to like 2010, I had all sorts of people saying, oh, you're just exaggerating. They're not going to do that. They're not, if they don't sell that much, they're not going to make it into TV. Well, now you just go to Disney Plus. That is exactly what they did. So you're never going to receive an apology from the people that said you were insane for saying that they would end up using Riri Williams into television and movie. Obviously, Disney Plus. They're going to disappear. They're gone. And pretend like you never said, accurately predicted these things, but they all did come to pass. So congratulations, Englantine. Congratulations, Captain Cumming. Congratulations, Richard, even though you've done a complete 180 and now you are somehow, some way, the guy who bashes conservatives on a daily basis on your YouTube channel, which is very strange to me because you said you were a conservative for, I don't know, multiple years, but now you're not. So I don't know. I just kind of confused as how somebody can just like wake up one morning and just be like the opposite version. Like you went from Richard to Bizarro Richard, but then maybe Bizarro Richard was the actual Richard. I don't know who the real guy was. So all of it is very interesting to me. Time Warrior, that gives Bendis too much credit. Yeah, it's it's sad because Bendis at times shows like glimpses of actually like being solid, but then he would do like junk like this. And you're like, okay. And then even before Riri Williams was introduced, the book minimized Iron Man in the book. So there was like a number of issues when he first came on where I want to say that Tony Stark in his actual armor, like you'd have to read through 5 issues before you could get like 1 or 2 pages of him in his actual armor. And there was like no action. It was just like dialogue, just like Tony going back and forth with people and having like whatever issues that he was having. And he was on some investigation, which again, investigations I'm perfectly fine with. But it's an Iron Man book where you went out of your way for like 90% plus of the time to not have him in his armor. Or you know, I don't know. So it was very strange. And then when Bendis went to DC, I knew that he was going to screw that up because I had been buying Super Sons for the first time in like, I was never a DC guy. And all of a sudden, with Super Sons was out, and it was just an amazing book, and it was wholesome, and there was father-son stuff, and it was something that you could just feel really good about. And then they were like, Bendis is coming over to DC, and Bendis is going to do like Superman or whatever it was. And I was like, no, he's going to ruin it. He's going to ruin everything. And again, that's exactly what happened. They canceled Super Sons, and then Bendis started like having like, Clark and Lois were having marriage problems, and then his son or whatever became LGBT. I don't even know what. Like, I noped out on DC as soon as Bendis came over because I was like, I do not want to get financially invested in anything that he is on moving forward. I'm not going to do it because I've been burned far too many times. So Final Fantasy fan is here. I'm getting the feeling that the Japanese part for Ironheart was Bendis trying to get the manga and anime crowd, even though Marvel chased out their own fans for chasing the Watchmen money. Yeah, I mean, that's a plausible theory. I don't know. So all I know it was a low point in Marvel history. I'm sure there people be upset about that. Marvel's been in the valley. The Valley of Darkness for quite some time now. And I've said before that ever since the deal with the devil in Spider-Man, for all intents and purposes, deal with the devil, Marvel has never been the same since Peter Parker sold his soul to the devil. For all intents and purposes, that's essentially what he did. And I feel like on some supernatural, some sort of metaphysical level, when they did that to their flagship character, there was, whatever beyond the veil, something was fundamentally broken on a spiritual level within Marvel. I don't know. You tell me, but it's never been the same. There's been fits and starts. It's like a car where the the alternator's not working properly or whatever, or the spark plug or who knows, and you're just like, it's like puttering and it wants to kind of like start again, but it just can't. It's not the same. Let's see real quick. Let's see if there's any interesting comments here. The mighty guy, you forgot the part of Riri's backstory where she only became Iron Man after she robbed Tony Stark. Exactly, that's what we were saying. The Riri comic was shown. Sounds like modern day schizo posting. Don't know what that is about. The overall attempt to force a cultural shift the past 15 years has been an utter disaster in all industries. That's true. Let's see. Regardless of your politics, I think everyone can agree that most of the Marvel legacy characters were wasted potential. This is most about like Marvel stuff. Let's see. Wow, those were really different times. Bro felt the need to briefly pause his dark roast to explain the term spank bank. I've said this before, but for those that want to know, because I've actually seen people talk about this online, where the dark roast came from was I was talking to Richard in the DM room that at the time I believe had Captain Cummings and Eglantine, but I don't know if it was after Captain Cummings and Eglantine left, and maybe it was just Richard and I. So there was like 6 or 7 months where it was like me, Captain Cummings, Eglantine, and Richard. And then there was like a fight between Captain Cummings and Eglantine over his brother and free speech and all this sort of stuff. And then they like kind of left. And then it was like Richard and I for a while. Anyway, I was talking about my content, and I was talking about Dan Slott just being really mean and nasty towards anybody that believed anything differently than him as it pertains to the Second Amendment or just politics in general. And I said, you know, if I wanted to, I can do a dark roast of Dan Slott that would have him huddled in a corner crying about his life and where he is and all of this sort of stuff. But I don't do it because I don't want to sink to Dan Slott's level. I don't want to just hurt him for the sake of hurting him. I actually want to have content that speaks to something of substance in terms of what is wrong with the industry. And Richard was like, dark roast, that's a really good idea. And I'm going to take that, or I'm, you know, like whatever, I'm going to grab it. And I was like, what? And he was like, yeah, I could do like dark roast of like Heather Antos and these people, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, no, dude, that's the exact wrong lesson. I just told you that I don't do that sort of thing because that's not what you're supposed to do. That's wrong. No. And then I was like, if you do something like that, they are going to hold it against you for the rest of your life. And then, of course, Richard being Richard, he went along with it and he did his dark roast, which became infamous, just like I told him it would become. And they did, in fact, use it against him for the rest of his life. And I don't know if Richard ever, you know, deleted our little conversations back in the day, but if he has any qualms with the accuracy as to what I'm saying, he's could feel free to let everyone know what I thought about his quote unquote dark roast when he first came up with the idea, because I told him that's a really bad idea and you don't want to do that. So, and then he did it. So very interesting. Just like I told him, hey, you should really do that Joe Rogan interview. You're never going to have another opportunity to get that big of an audience with Joe Rogan again if you turn it down. And then he did, and then he did the Comedy Central thing where they, of course, did their best to make him look absolutely ridiculous. He said he was moving at the time, and I told him, dude, you got to contact that producer. You got to do it because you're not going to get a second shot. They give you one shot when they invite you to those things, and if you don't go, then they're never going to call you back again. So here's another little story from my time in the media. Way back in the day, when I was at the Washington Times, how do I say this? I'm trying to be as tactful, and it's a personal story. So my grandma died. My grandmother basically was a second mother to me. She raised me, and she lived to like 98 years old. And she died, and I had to fly from Washington. So I flew from Washington, D.C. to Chicago to comfort my mother when my grandmother died. And Captain Cummings is here. I was just giving you props, man. And when I flew to Illinois to comfort my mom after my grandmother died, the Blaze, a producer at the Blaze, reached out to me and asked me if I would be on to talk about, like, I don't know, like gun rights or something along those lines. But it had to be within like 24 hours. I had to basically fly back to Washington, D.C., to where they were going to film it to be able to do it. But I had just flown to Illinois to be with my mother. So then I had a dilemma. I knew that if I told this producer no, that I would never get another opportunity because they give you one shot. Because if you say no to them, they think that they're like basically these like little, you know, mini gods of the media or whatever, and it's a big offense to them. They're like, all these people are all full of themselves or whatever, especially producers. And I was like, no, I mean, I can't. I just, I had to fly to Chicago for a family emergency or whatever, and I told him something like, if you could do it later in the week or whatever, like, basically after the funeral. I was trying to because I was like, basically, if they could essentially do it after the funeral and I was back in DC, then I could do it. So, of course, they're going to be like, yeah, blah, 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 blah. But they will never get back to you. So that was I had personal experience with these producers. The same thing with radio. Back in the day, I was on various like nationally syndicated radio stuff and local DC radio. And there was a guy, I've told this story before. He wanted me to speak on Russian ports and national security, which is actually funny in hindsight now, because I ended up ultimately doing all sorts of research into that sort of stuff for Soulfinder Silent Service, which is coming out hopefully next year. But at the time, he gave me like 5 minutes. It was like, I need you on the radio. I need you to talk about Russian ports and national security involving, their ports. And I was like, I can't do that on like 5 minutes notice. Like, I need to be able to do my research. I'm not an expert on that. Like, I know a lot of national security stuff and, foreign relations or whatever, but I'm not an expert in Russian ports. So can you give me just like a little bit of time to bone up on that before I'm on your radio show? And the guy got all pissed off, basically, and he never called me back after that again because I wouldn't fake it on the radio. So actually, me telling him that I wanted to know what I was actually talking about, I didn't want to just pretend like I knew, I could just come up with some boilerplate like BS and like pretend as if I know about all that sort of stuff and get in the ballpark of correct without actually knowing I'm correct. But I didn't want to do that. I actually wanted to tell the truth. And so in one instance, I was never invited back on a particular radio show because I said no. And then with the Blaze and a particular producer, I was never invited back because I told him no, because my grandma died and I wanted to be with my mother as she was grieving. So anyway, again, when Richard was, when the producers for Joe Rogan came to him and they were like, hey, Joe's interested in what you got going here. You want to go on? And he said no. I was like, dude, you cannot say no. You still have time. Please get back with the producers. There's like 1 million people or whatever that watch the Joe Rogan show on a regular basis. But he was like, no, I'm moving. And I was like, oh, okay, that's weird. Very odd. But I think he just, I think he, on some level, he knew that there was going to be that many people watching him and he was going to be asked serious questions by Joe Rogan. And if you flub on Joe Rogan, then 1 million people, like there was probably some sort of social anxiety that was involved that he just didn't want to admit to. Which again, if that's the case, that's fine. But like, you should just don't say I'm moving for like the 5th time in a year. He's moving back and forth between like New York City and Texas or whatever it was. It was all very strange. Anyways, continuing to go through this. Man, that dark roast was savage. I've actually never listened to I've heard about it, but I've actually never seen it. I know it was deleted very quickly. All right, so whatever. Check it out if you want to check it out. If not, no problem. But like I said, Captain Cummings back in the day, he was on the money with his commentary about the industry. And these days, he's actually on the money in terms of his commentary, in terms of praying the rosary on a regular basis. And I don't think he would mind me saying that. Actually, Captain Cummings was recently on John's Long Box as well. And they had an interview there. So you might want to check out John's Long Box, his interview with Captain Cummings there. A lot of interesting information was conveyed there. Maybe if you find him on on Twitter. If he wants to say his tag or whatever, you can find him on there. But anyway, these days he is deep into the doctors of the church and all that sort of stuff. So anyway, back to Twitter. All right. Oh, this is what I was going to say. So speaking of all this sort of stuff, this is related. Because all these guys, everything mutated into just like, I'll just read it. I have never seen an influencer who seems hell-bent on a Pyrrhic victory who had a just reason for his or her scorched earth tactics, no matter how much they try and justify them. The three main feeds I follow each week involve faith, indie comics, and politics. Such individuals get a lot of attention in ecosystems. They always have a monomaniacal madness energy to them and a disturbing glint in their eyes. They often have devoted followings, in part because many people mistake passionate deliveries as an infallible indicator of righteousness on truth. If you see the red flags associated with these individuals, then you should probably distance yourself as quickly as possible. Their vendetta fires of envy, jealousy, and rage eventually consume everything in their path. And to what I was talking about earlier in terms of trying to give credit, I'm not perfect by any means, but painting Eugene von Gerard brush fire between Mount Elephant and Timboon, 1857. See, that was what I was trying to say with the gamer from Mars. When you're researching something and you get it, and there's a painting, and you know who the actual artist was, try and give proper attribution to it. So that's what you want to do. Again, I'm not perfect. I've made mistakes in the past here or there, but if you can, give people credit for the things that they do. But I'm sure, again, I'm not perfect by any means, but you want to try, especially like people that are not well known. I know that there are times when on Soulfinder, I'm probably not I don't tag Matt Weldon on every single Soulfinder thing I do, but I try on a regular basis to be like Matt Weldon rocks, Timothy Lim rocks, Eric Canetti rocks, Jeff Spokes rocks, Stephen Cummings rocks, Rodrigo Avila's rocks, all these guys rock. Anybody I missed, Alejandro Mirabal rocks. Thank you, everybody who ever contributed anything to Soulfinder, Brett R. Smith, Bill Williams, everybody, Mark Pellegrini on certain levels as well. Thank you. Let's see. Captain Cummings, today was Our Lady of Guadalupe feast day. 10 million people converted in America because of this story. Yeah, if you're not familiar with Our Lady of Guadalupe and that particular story in the history of it, look it up. It's very, very interesting. What is it? The Tilma? Again, I mispronounced some stuff here or there, but I try my best to get it right. Anyway, all right. Let's see. We're back to this, and I'll try and get to some actual pictures of Japan here. Again, thank you to everybody that been buying the rosaries, that's buying the Soulfinder plushies just in time for Christmas. Again, if I see a Soulfinder plushie that seraphim on top of a Christmas tree, and you come and you have proof of such a thing, just like Regal Eagle here, he's got the seraphim at the top of the tree. I will definitely give you a Doug prize. So very cool, man. I appreciate it. Boom. All right, keep going down. I'm trying to find the Japanese stuff, some pictures, so I can talk about that. And this is what I was talking about the people that are trying to burn everything to the ground. I was in Japan for like a week, and so I was so busy that I didn't see these people. This is Poop Face Peppermint Flavor Poop here. And so Eric July has a new crowdfund for animation. He's got this Ripperworks thing. And of course, these guys come out of the woodwork and start saying how he was like always crapping on crowdfunding for years, etc., etc., etc. When he did no such thing. What he did was was say that there are some people that get in over their head and they have no idea what they're doing and they screw up the campaign. True. And then he said that there are other people essentially that are just so far behind, like maybe they even know what they're doing, but like they're just taking their time. They got so much money, they don't know what to do with. It's money's coming out of their ears for the first time in their life. And so they're paying off, who knows what they're paying off? Student loans, mortgages. Maybe they're buying all sorts of stuff. There was a guy back in the day, speaking of a Comicsgate guy, he made tens of thousands of dollars, and the dude, he just spent it all on like comic books. The money that was supposed to go to his actual campaign, he blew it all on other like comic books and other campaigns, and then he couldn't fulfill. And so that was what Eric was talking about, which is completely true, rational, logical. There are campaigns that I backed in like 2019, 2020, or whatever it is, back in the day, quote unquote Comicsgate. I still don't have my books. So one of them, I'm not trying to be mean here, but if I was, it wouldn't be a big deal because, hey, Shinobi Sasquatch, I don't know what the heck's going on with that book. I should probably check and see. That book came out. That book made tens of thousands of dollars, if I'm not mistaken. Where is it? Nowhere. I don't know. I know that there were random updates like every 6 months or something like that about like the writer was blasting the artist, and then the artist would, go off on the writer and back and forth. And then it wasn't going to be completed by the original artist. And then they would and then eventually the writer would every once in a while take all sorts of jabs at the people that were asking where their book is and blah, 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 blah. And I never asked for a refund. So because I'm so morbidly curious in terms of, will I ever actually get the book? Like, will it be 2030 when the book arrives? What will it look like? I won't read it. I have no desire to read the book, but if it actually arrives on my doorstep, I will flip through it and then I'll throw it in the trash. Because, yeah, I mean, how can you be mad at me because I didn't want to wait a decade for a book? Like, I'm sorry. There's another guy that called himself Comicsgate for a while. He was based in Ukraine, and it was like a horror book or whatever. And where is that book? He called himself CG for a while. That book's, I backed that book. Nowhere to be found. And that guy, he even admitted in the updates to his campaign that the book wasn't late because of the war. Like when the war broke out, people are like, oh man, like give him some slack or blah, 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 blah. Which you're like, yeah, of course. He's like, who knows where, I don't know what's going on. I just know that there's, Russia and Ukraine are battling and where he's located and blah, blah, blah. But he came back later and said that that wasn't the reason for the insane delays. So the war is not the reason. You called yourself Comicsgate. I don't have my book. It's years later. Then I made a tweet one time about why is the U.S. sending over $100 billion into the black hole that is Ukraine. Like they just keep sending money and it just keeps going and going and going and going. Like, is the U.S. at war with Russia? Because I feel like if you spend like hundreds of billions of dollars in a war against Russia, you're by proxy, you're de facto at war with Russia. This is really weird. Like when is too much going to be too much money? Is it $300 billion? Is it $400 billion? Is it $500 billion? Are we just laundering money to corrupt people both in Ukraine and overseas and in the United States in terms of politicians? What is going on here? And he unfollowed me immediately. So it's like, okay, the guy who owes me a book who's in Ukraine, he can't update his campaign and let me know what's going on with my book, or when he does, he just has stupid excuses. But he's definitely on the ball in terms of any little commentary I have on the war, so he can immediately unfollow me. He was perfectly fine to DM me back in the day when he wanted me to promote his campaign, but he's also perfectly fine to unfollow me the second that I say that, you know, spending hundreds of billions of dollars in a war with no end is kind of bizarre. So this is what I'm talking about. Anyway, Shinobi Sasquatch, are you ever going to get me my book? What's going on? I don't know. So, Final Fantasy America and Russia at war with each other again. Yeah, who knows? I don't know. The more things change, the more they stay the same. It was very funny how immediately after, you know, the Afghanistan debacle, you know, Joe Biden, they pulled out the, you know, everybody instantaneously. They left all the vehicles there and all sorts of weapons there. And there was that like infamous story about the guy, the Afghan guy who was literally holding onto a plane, a cargo plane, as it was taking off because he didn't want to be left behind. And then you just see this morbid, macabre figure, you know, you like falling to the ground or whatever it was. Like you're like, that guy's fallen. There's no way he's gonna stay on the side of a plane going 700 miles an hour or whatever it is, and it's like negative 50 degrees at 33,000 feet. Yeah, I'm pretty sure he's dead. Right after that debacle, all of a sudden there was a new war. And the war is, we got to fund this to infinity, no matter what. We're just going to keep printing money forever because we have to be in wars until we die forever. It never ends. So, yeah, anyway, the creator of that campaign unfollowed me immediately after my observation that we are in war after war after war for decade after decade after decade. I didn't think that that was that controversial. I really just want my book. That's fine if you want to unfollow me for that. And it's especially fine if you just give me the book that I ordered and I paid for years ago. So, yeah. Neferiti, thanks for getting the Soulfinder Seraphim as well. Appreciate it. One of these days we'll get down to some Japan pictures. More Seraphim. Thank you for drawing the Seraphim. So here you go. Oh, we're starting to get there. We got Japanese candy, more Seraphim. Common America. Tim and Mark. I wish I could actually take pictures and video while I was there of Tim and Mark and their table. But if you don't know, the Japanese are very particular about whether, you know, if you take a picture of them, if you take video of them, they don't want you posting it all over social media. So what you'll often see is people will put the emojis over their face, they'll blur them out or whatever, because they take that sort of stuff seriously. So I did not want to be a guest at, you know, this Comic-Con and be offending everybody because I'm sitting there snapping all sorts of pictures and video. And they're like, is this guy going to start, putting this all over social media? So I had to just sit there, which in some way just being part of the moment and enjoying it. And I got to see the culmination of all of Mark's and Tim's efforts over the years with Common America and Black Hops and Iconic Comics. Like everything came to fruition in Tokyo. And I got to see them surrounded by creators and surrounded by readers, in like the wholesome love for Common America and what Tim and Mark have done was on full display. They were giving them all sorts of gifts, all sorts of candy. They were literally giving me gifts and me candy. And it was crazy. I got to see, like, there was a reader who came up. Here's Mount Fuji in the background when I was leaving. Let me see. But I took that picture when I was on top of a building, which I can get to. They were drawing pictures of Father Redder while they were there. Here's a picture of me with my hat on, my beard. Nice little picture of Tim and Mark and one of the Japanese creators. They're kind of like poking fun of them a little bit there, I think. We got to bond over Golgo 13 video game and the animes. Was in the Godzilla Hotel with Mark and Tim and some other people. This is when I went home, and this was when the Nigerian pimps were chasing me down the street. Got to go to all sorts of nice food. Again, more nice food. This is me looking out over Mount Fuji, going to different shrines, getting sushi while I was there. It was all very, 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 very cool. Had all sorts of grilled meats day after day after day. I'm pretty sure I lost weight while I was there because I was walking like, I don't know, 5+ miles a day and then just surviving on grilled meats. So that was really cool. Like I said, Tim and Mark were treated, I don't want to say like royalty, but they were swarmed with people, swarmed with beautiful cosplayers taking pictures. Oh, that was going to say, one guy, he came up to me with his father. It was a father and his son. He was obviously somebody who had been in the military, and he actually gave me a challenge coin, a nice one with the U.S. flag and the Japanese flag. It says, for outstanding performance. And he was like, hey, I really appreciate what you're doing with the series. Been a fan for a long time, been a reader for a long time, and all of that sort of stuff. So that was kind of took me aback in a good way. It was very humbling. And because you never know who you're affecting on the other side of the world. You're doing these books. I never thought I would be in Japan. And then suddenly I'm there. And then suddenly somebody who's been reading for like 6 years or whatever. He was in the military. He's like a nice, well-adjusted dude. He's got a very nice son with him. And he comes up to the table and he gives me this challenge coin that says for outstanding performance. So yeah, that kind of stuff is like really super cool. And like I said, very humbling. Another artist gifted me this piece with Father Redder and Godzilla. And Mark was talking to me about this particular movie because I'm not like a Godzilla buff. I don't know all the movies. My brothers were big Godzilla fans when they were younger. But this was like a version of Godzilla that was essentially like all of the deceased soldiers from World War II or something. They possessed the corpse of a Godzilla at the bottom of the ocean and then came back to take revenge on like, I don't know, like Japan and like the US and like everybody involved with World War II or something like that. Again, I apologize for not knowing like all the history, but it all works out in a very cool way. So actually there was a lot of thought that went into this in terms of Father Redder being an exorcist and this little guy here from either a manga and anime that I should know, but I don't know. My wife does, and I know Tim and Mark know. But all of this, there was a lot of thought that went into this particular piece. So yeah, I'm very grateful. Got all sorts of like cookies. Got artwork with Father Redder with the little seraphim buddy, the one that was designed by Timothy Lim. I could go on and on. I went to Mass. Actually, I don't know if Captain Cummings is still here, but I went to Mass while I was in Tokyo. And it was weird because on multiple levels, you don't know exactly what's being said, but because you know the order of the Mass and you do know what's being said in English, it's like I was able to follow along, but not simultaneously. So it was like I've never been more perfectly lost, yet found, confused, yet aware while being at a Japanese Mass, which sounds incredibly beautiful in Japanese. And then it was like also kind of like really beautiful because the Eucharist and receiving it, whether you're in the United States or Japan or anywhere, that in and of itself is very beautiful and humbling. And I was like weirdly emotional while I was there, and it's hard to explain. And I was thinking about like being a young man, and I had been in Germany for 3 years, and I never went to Mass for 3 years when I was a young man in Germany, which is weird because I went to like an evangelical service at someone's behest while I was there. And I went to like Baptist stuff while I was in Germany, but I never went to Mass as a young man when I was in the army in Germany. And as I got older and I became more serious with my faith, I'll always kind of feel bad about that. So anyway, I was thinking about that and then being in Japan and like being so super tired. You'd been running around everywhere. And then there was a part of me that was just like, oh, I don't need to go to Mass today. Like I'm traveling. Like I'll go to confession, which is like wrong. You shouldn't think that way anyway. Like I didn't get a dispensation. And I was like, God will understand. I'll go to confession. But then I was like, no, I gotta go. I could go to mass. Like, if you have enough energy to go, run from Nigerian pimps, and you have enough energy to go and have all sorts of grilled meats, and you have enough energy to be out all night, and you have enough energy to like be going to sightseeing stuff, but then you wake up in the morning, you're like, but I don't have enough time to see God. Like, I feel like I would be, I don't want to say feel, I know I would be held accountable for that one day. So I was like, no, man, I got to go to mass. So Luce was there, and then after mass, it was like 1.5 miles away from the show, and I was like, all right, I got a half an hour. It's a little hilly course to the show. I can make it. So then I was like speed walking to the show, and did that. So that was cool. Anyway, yeah, very beautiful. And this particular artist, he actually had like a big banner in front of his booth of Father Redder and the Seraphim. And so it was cool that his actual booth was like a mini Soulfinder booth / Common America booth on some level. So that was cool. Obviously we had our own stuff going on. Here's Tim and Mark surrounded by all these women. So I know this sounds really weird, but there was the part of me that, like, once I saw that, like, all of these women over the years were cosplaying as Tim and Mark's characters, I was like, that would be so awesome if, like, one day Tim and Mark are in Japan and they're just, like, taking pictures with all these, like, beautiful cosplayers or something like that. Like, and it happened. It actually happened. It was like, in my mind, it's like, you want, how do I say it? Like, I'll try not to get weirdly emotional about this as well, but like, if you have friends that are working so hard to realize their dreams and their aspirations and their goals, and you see, especially like all the behind the scenes stuff, the hard work, the obstacles that they have to go through and over and around and all sort of stuff, you know how hard these guys work. And like, you have a vision of what it would be like if it all came together into like the perfect moment. And this was it. Like, the show in the week and everything about it, it felt like a dream. It felt like a movie. And I was sitting there as like this, like, omniscient, observer, like third person observer sort of thing, like watching this, like the movie of Mark and Tim's life on some level, and all of it coming together perfectly in this happy, joyous occasion with all of these people that also feel the same way, and like sort of like Common America has touched their lives in a way where they want to give time and effort into all of these costumes. And on the weekend, Tagia says, howdy, Doug. Good to see you. Good to see you too. So it was just like this surreal experience to see like two guys. It's like, good. Sometimes things actually work out, like a perfect or near perfect way for like solid dudes, good dudes, because it doesn't always happen that way. Sometimes you do all of the right things. Sometimes you're a good person, and sometimes God's like, you know what? I'm going to give you a crown of thorns. And but I also believe that over the course of years, Tim and Mark have worn their crown of thorns. And so this was the day where they were allowed to, for briefly or for whatever reason, to be able to take that crown of thorns off and just sort of like bask in this happiness, in like a pseudo, like a feeling of glory, or I don't even know what, but it was just awesome to witness. And congratulations to Tim and Mark for everything. They got to see the cars, Common America vehicles, iconic comic mobile type things. I had somebody actually put together a Father Redder like little action figure for me. A nice old woman gave me actually German chocolates, all sorts of stuff. So you got readers that are taking pictures with Japanese food, with Soulfinder, Seraphim, and Badger. I could go on and on. It was just overall just like a really, really cool experience. And I'm just happy that I got to be there with Tim and Mark. And I'd like to go there again. So, oh yeah, Ethereal Dragon. They are paid cosplayers. Again, I know you're quoting like the haters or whatever. But yeah, no, they're not quote unquote paid cosplayers or whatever. All the peppermint skull, peppermint poop dude. I think that's, I wouldn't be surprised if he was one of those who said that. He's the guy who said that Iconic Comics has angel investors and all that sort of stuff. So they don't know what they're talking about. They're just straight up dishonest people. AL, Tim and Mark deserve their success. They kept their heads down and kept working. Well said, AL. So anyway, let's see. Is there anything else that I missed along the way? That's pretty much everything. But again, I want to say thanks to everybody that's been supporting Soulfinder along the way, whether you're in Japan, whether you're in the United States, whether you're in South America, whether you're in Europe, anywhere. Appreciate it. Thanks for getting the Japanese translations. Thanks for getting the Soulfinder Seraphim. Thanks for getting Soulfinder Tunnel Hounds, volumes 1, 2, 3, and 4. Noctis Terrari, Soulfinder Warcry, Soulfinder Silent Service, volume 5 will be out hopefully next year. It's being colored and lettered. Well, not being lettered yet. It's actually being colored, inked and colored as we speak. Matt and Rodrigo are doing their best. And when the time comes, we will get it lettered. We will get it out. But it is looking fantastic. I appreciate all of you for tuning in to this little catch-up stream right here. Thanks for supporting Iconic Comics. There's plenty on deck for 2026. I didn't even get to some of that stuff. I wanted to allude to some stuff. But 2026, all sorts of cool stuff is on deck. Tim and Mark have plenty of surprises for you. Next early summer, I'm like 99.9% sure that there's a surprise that's on deck that's taking shape as we speak. That's going to raise some eyebrows from some people in a good way and probably a bad way if you don't like Iconic Comics. But if you do like Iconic Comics, you're going to be like, ooh, interesting. Oh, that was the point. Iconic Comics continues to push outward to expand. The easiest thing in the world would have been to not do the show in Japan. It would have been so easy to be like, you know what? It's Christmas, Thanksgiving, it's Christmas. I don't want to travel. I don't want to lug all these books. I don't want to lug all this stuff. We can go some other time. They're already buying the books. We don't need to see people in person. But no, Tim, Mark, and myself, we put everything into our suitcases, got charged extra for the luggage that was overweight. At least I did. And went over there. And it was a great time had by all. And it was so cool to actually meet Japanese readers in person and shake their hands and say thank you and to break bread with these people. I should say grill meat with these people. And it was very, very, very cool. They were the most gracious hosts in the world. They were awesome. Iconic Comics will continue to push forward the boundary of what is possible in indie comics. I know Eric July and the Rippaverse are doing the same thing. They're trying their best with the animation. And one of these days, I want to do the animation as well. I didn't even talk about that. I'm continuing to try and lay the financial foundation to be able to do animation that I want to do. I know Tim and Mark have already done that. Anyway, the point is, there's no slowing down. We're going to continue to march forward towards the next objective. And trust me, there are plenty of objectives that we have in mind. Anyway, thanks again for everything. Appreciate you guys tuning in, and I will see you later. See ya.